Welcome, Ralphie G of the Mob.
Thanks, Diane. Glad to be here.
So active as you have been, I want to just I want to get a timeline from you for the listeners, just to sort of establish where we're at. Can you give me like a timeline for the Mob?
Timeline from the beginning?
Yes.
Oh man, it's going way back.
Well, but that's why you're here.
Well, I think one thing that's really cool about the Mob is that the members of the Mob really didn't form as a band at first. We were childhood friends, met in school and Little League and that kind of thing. So really, you know, with the Mob, without the Mob, we've stayed, you know, together as a family all throughout time. And you know, even when we weren't active, we were still active in the family. So, you know, it's very easy for us to come and go and continue playing music and that sort of thing. But I would say timeline-wise, around 1980. We actually started playing, and we had a couple of little different lineups then, even though Jose, Jack Flanagan, and myself were the nucleus of the band. We weren't all ready to actually play music at that time, so we picked up with a couple other musicians and started playing, you know, punk rock music, stuff that was happening at the time in New York City. Bands like Heart Attack, Kraut, Reagan Youth, and so forth were part of the scene, and you know, we adapted to that scene really well. It was what we loved, coming from, you know, the history of rock and roll in New York City and that sort of thing, Kiss and the Dolls and Johnny Thunders and the Ramones, and we were just really a continuation of that. You know, around later in '81, the Bad Brains really started to make a big splash there, and they brought this whole new sound into New York, which was the more aggressive, what later became the hardcore sound, not based on what they were doing solely, but what the country was doing. So we really loved that because bands were progressing, you know, towards that. And so we really heard something in that really drived us to create a little more of an extreme sound with a little more velocity and lyrics based upon what was happening at the times in New York City. So that's where we got our start. We continued to play, put out some records, as you know, following the DC format of multiple songs on a 45. We love that whole idea with the SOA and the Minor Threat and the Teen Idol type style. And we did the same thing with Upset the System. We did it all ourselves on our own label, that sort of thing. Just continue to play out, mostly in New York City. CBGB's, A7, 171, wherever we could play. And word got out, word spread, and then the visiting bands would have have us play with them, or we'd have visiting bands from other areas play with us, and you know, the community started to form, and that really was the basis for what was to become the younger version of the New York punk scene, which moved into more of a hardcore type phrase or concept. After that, we continued to progress as a band and mature as individuals, and put out the Step Forward EP, which was a little more, I would say, sophisticated in its approach to the music that we were doing, and really we were just progressing and maturing as musicians, which came to be on the final release of the LP, We Come to Crush. So then that was done and I believe released in about '86. So for those, you know, 5 years or so, we were really, you know, just the hardest working act in New York hardcore, and just pumping out anything we can and progressing musically and spreading out and doing a couple of tours here and there, and just enjoying ourselves and enjoying this new music that was erupting at the time.
I just want to go back to the first two 7-inches. They were put out in 1982 and 1983.
Yes.
Yeah, just to sort of establish that as a timeline, because a lot of people think of New York hardcore as a little bit later than that. So I just want to call attention to how early that was.
Yes.
You know, and the fact that you kind of kickstarted things for many other bands.
Well, we helped a lot of bands out with shows. One band in particular that we had the opportunity and the pleasure to release was the Urban Waste 7-inch, also on Mob Style Records, and that's considered a classic these days, and I think we're going to play a tune from that later on. So yeah, you know, anytime we could help bands with gigs, and you know, it was a scene, a definite scene at the time, and a tight-knit scene, and you know, like any other scene or family, there was, you know, the issues and problems and situations and so forth, but for the most part, we stuck together, you know, as a New York United.
That's awesome.